I'm Ray, and this is TinyTableGames. Thanks for clicking on the video. Like and subscribe if you haven't already and help the little channel grow. Today, we're playing something a little bit different. It is Mythos Tales. It is a detective game by 8th Summit. Now, here's an interesting story. I got this in the Dice Tower East 2025 virtual flea market. And I was very curious about it and bought it, as I said in my what stuff I bought at Dice Tower East video, because it said Cthulhu on it. And it's like, oh, that seems interesting. That's all I knew. So imagine my surprise and delight when it turns out that this game is different than I thought it was going to be, and in a good way. So rewind time for a moment, because yes, it's story time with Ray and why this game is interesting to me. So back in 1986, I was sitting around doing my thing, and then a certain song started coming over the TV. And if you're like me, that song is all you need for the complete explanation. That is, in fact, the opening sounds of the 1980s BBC Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, with Jeremy Brett playing the role. It aired for more or less 10 years. Unfortunately, Jeremy Brett had some health problems. He was, in fact, manic depressive, but it made him a good Sherlock Holmes. But in any case, he loved the role. Everybody involved with it loved it, and it became the definitive Sherlock Holmes for me. I had already been reading the Arthur Conan Doyle stories, and so I was a big Sherlock Holmes fan already. So that was just a delight, that TV show. Loved every second of it. So along comes a couple of Sherlock Holmes board games. There was two of note. One was 221B Baker Street, which is a roll and move game. Lots of little cards. Single like 3x5 card was the case, and then you go around to the pub or the graveyard or a couple other locations, literally roll and move around the board. And once you got to that location, you look at the clue book, read what the clue was, ta-da, and then everybody races back home. And if you rolled well, you got back to Baker Street first, and you could report on how you solved the case. Usually you were right, because those cases were not very hard. So later came a different one called Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. It came in a very brown, boring looking notebook with very basic ad hoc looking typed paper, but it was a much more detailed and interesting game in the sense that it just gave you a big map of the city of London and today's newspaper, and a telephone book, if you will, or a directory as to what addresses people were at. And then there would be, in the clue book, a little introduction to the case with Holmes and Watson saying, here's what the case is. And the idea is you're one of the Baker Street irregulars and helping Holmes out on some cases. And so you go running around and investigating. And as you do that, you check today's paper for any clues. Sometimes there's stuff in it, sometimes there isn't. But like all good archivists, by the way, as the game progresses and future cases occur, don't throw away your old newspapers, because you never know. Maybe that newspaper article that came out 3 weeks ago will be a big clue to something that happened just yesterday. And it does, in fact, work that way in the game sometimes. And so you'd have your directory, you could look up Old Bailey and talk to the coroner or run around town. And if there was something to find there, the clue book would say, yes, at this address, here's that. And every time you go look for a clue, it took away from your available time to solve the case. So if you made good choices, good for you. And if you made bad choices, you'd have less information. And when the time was up, you had to report back to Holmes and tell him what you knew about the case and compare your score to his. I love that game. Thought it was great. In fact, tried to buy another copy of it in this virtual flea market, didn't get it. But that's okay, having had played that one. So I thought, well, I thought no more about it. I'd actually seen it in a used bookstore the other day and thought, well, that'd be interesting. But why does that all apply? Because I just described to you how you play Mythos Tales. It is almost exactly the same as Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, only set in 1920s Arkham and the Mythos. So I went from interested in this game to quite delighted, and I can't wait. There are 8 mysteries to solve in this book, rather significant investigator book, which is about 170 pages. You have multiple daily newspapers. There's the Arkham, Massachusetts directory where you can look up people, many entries, a lot of them completely irrelevant and you'll never actually use them. They're just there for flavor and interest. There's a time track. the Arkham Advertiser daily paper, and in fact a map of Arkham that we'll be seeing soon. I plan to go through all 8 adventures. We'll see how it goes, and I'll probably mix it up with other things because I'm not sure everybody wants to watch 8 of these in a row. But rest assured, we will be solving all of the Mythos Tales. And as they say in the instruction book, there's it's basically meant as a chain series of adventures, so it tells a story overall over time. I suppose like a well-crafted season of Scooby-Doo with more tentacles. So with that said, the game is afoot, or possibly a tentacle. So here are the components of the game. Each case has a 1-page Arkham Advertiser. There's the rules. On the back of the rules is some, much like they did for Consulting Detective, even though this isn't the same group that made it, allies. It's basically some fixed places that are always good locations to check out. Here's the map of Arkham. Zooming in a little bit, you can see there's little numbers and quadrants associated with it. So like for this one, it's R17, that's a unique location just off North Sentinel Street and East River Street. So there's all sorts of interesting little places, and basically every place you're going to investigate happens in this area. And as I said, there's the directory. So like if one of the clues tells you, oh, you need to talk to so-and-so, then you can look them up in the directory and figure out which location they're at. Once you have that location, then you pull out the investigator book and turn to the appropriate page. Notice in the table of contents, there's 8 mysteries to solve. So in case I hadn't mentioned it yet, spoilers, there will be spoilers. We're going to play through all of this stuff. And the time tracker, by the way, every time you go someplace, you get 3 chances per day, basically, morning, afternoon, and evening for each day. And this is the little token you use for tracking where you're at. So when you go to your first it starts off the thing, if you will. When you go to your first location on day 1, that's when it starts counting. And this little X tells you how long you get to work on it. So like Dr. Armitage will say, this shouldn't take you more than 5 days. I'll see you then. So that's when you put the X on whatever time of day it is on the 5th day or whatever, or the 7th day. And that's when you're out of time. So at most, if you had a full 7 days, you'd have 21 clues to go hunt down to try to make it work. That's the absolute maximum, or 21 locations. The longer it takes, the more you get penalized in your score. And there's a quiz at the end, because of course there's a quiz. Because who doesn't like a good quiz in their game? And homework. You should take notes. Because if you go back to a place, that's more time, because it's presumed that your investigator went back there and had to ask the same questions over again. So note-taking is required, and quizzes occur at the end of the mystery. So for some people, this might feel a bit like homework, but I'm excited. A Grain of Evil. Investigation 1, Arkham, Massachusetts, June 30th, 1929. Responding eagerly to a telegram from your friend and mentor, you rush to the Miskatonic University Orne Library. There is a warm summer breeze gently rustling the trees, allowing the dappled sunlight to flicker lightly onto the streets. You cross the university quadrant to reach a great Gothic entrance. Professor Henry Armitage, Miskatonic's erudite librarian, greets you at a polished wooden door to his office. He leans on his cane, his wrinkled face cracking into a smile. Well then, I have an interesting little problem for us to explore. It has been some time since we exercised your deductive faculties, so how about a simple mystery to get you going again? Obviously, there's a chance that the events last night involved more than a simple crime, but I do not believe that to be the case. However, after my experiences of last summer, one can never be too careful. He shudders visibly upon alluding to his confrontation with the Watleys in the village of Dunwich. Armitage settles into his chair, adjusting the violets at his desk. Inspector Garrison called over breakfast this morning and precipitated my note to your good self. It seems the inspector is at a loss and requires our special assistance. Last evening, as you may have noted from this morning's edition of the Arkham Advertiser, a disturbance occurred on West High Street. It was a pleasant enough evening, and at 7 o'clock the streets were relatively full. A young woman, well-dressed and of seemingly good health, collapsed on the sidewalk after emerging in a state of distress from the uptown park. A small crowd gathered to assist the young lady. An orderly from St. Mary's Hospital and his wife stooped in to revive her, and a policeman was found. The orderly noticed a growing crimson stain seeping onto the woman's blouse. He slit the garment free with his pocket knife. At once, the horrific nature of a wound in the lady's chest was apparent, and he stemmed the steadily increasing flow of blood. I am happy to report that the disaster was averted by his quick thinking. An ambulance arrived in good time to take her to the hospital, and they have managed to stabilize her condition. The librarian pauses to sip coffee from a delicate cup. The policeman assumed this was an attack by an unknown assailant until the woman regained consciousness momentarily in the ambulance. She raved nonsensical syllables before crying out that the trees were alive. Alive! Whilst dealing with the mysterious lady, the policeman was sharp-eyed enough to spot a man lingering in a crowd of onlookers. The man was acting in a furtive way, watching the proceedings with a curious detachment. He was tall, over 6 feet, with worn brown suit and dark hair and a distinctive birthmark under his left eye. When the policeman called out to the man, he fled the scene. Being preoccupied with the lady, the policeman was not able to pursue and unfortunately noted his description only in his pocketbook. Armitage sits back, the leather of his chair creaking. He steeples his fingers. The identity of both the woman and this mysterious fugitive remain a mystery. It is also for us to determine if there are forces beyond the mundane at work. You'd better get going. Let Garrison's men take care of the crime scene. They do get rather protective. But before you set off, Armitage says, remember, if you need help, come see me at my home. I am unlikely to be in my office when working a case. And that's all you get to go on. What do we know? We know Inspector Garrison was called in. It was all happened outside Uptown Park. And the orderly from St. Mary's was the one who helped staunch the bleeding on the woman. So right there, that suggests maybe talking to the orderly at St. Mary's, maybe going by Uptown Park, despite Armitage's warning that the police are somewhat protective of their crime scenes. And also we should check the paper and see what it says. And while I won't read the whole paper, here's the article of interest. Woman attacked in Uptown Park. A disturbance occurred around 7 p.m. last night in West High Street when a young woman collapsed. Bystanders were able to provide assistance to the woman who was obviously in distress and grievously injured. The police were summoned and were quickly on the scene. An ambulance took the young woman, who as yet remains unnamed, to St. Mary's Hospital for urgent treatment. So at least now we know what side of the park it was on. It was on West High Street. Detective Garrison of the Arkham PD had made an appeal for any witnesses to the incident to come forward and provide statements. Police are treating the incident as a criminal one. Garrison expressed surprise, remarking that this type of crime was unusual for the district, one of Arkham's wealthiest areas, but he felt this was an isolated incident and citizens of Uptown should not worry unduly. Well, based on everything, I think our first stop is St. Mary's Teaching Hospital, C11. So C11 is over here on the map. So we'll put on the track that we're at morning of day 1. Oh yes, and how long do we have to this? Let's see. Unless there are surprises, I foresee visiting between 6 and 11 locations in order to answer most questions regarding the current mystery. If you're a bit rusty, it's possible other interesting facts present themselves in the course of your investigation, so take your time if you think if necessary, but please wrap up no later than day 5 in the afternoon. So there's our in target. So we have what? 3, 6, 9, 12, 13, 14 locations we're allowed to visit before we run out of time. Now here's something weird. Since I'll be reading a lot, I suppose I'll face the camera towards me while I'm reading, because that just seems more natural if you're in the situation. If you're playing around the table, all the people playing take turns reading the clue while everybody listens and take notes. So feel free to listen and take notes, and let's see how you do along with me. Of course, you're stuck going with the places I choose to go, but still, you can draw your own conclusions. Campus District, location C11. Armitage often mentions his friend, Dr. Vincent Sutton, as being a useful point of contact at the hospital, and you ask for the doctor at the front desk. The stern administrative assistant frowns at your request, but dispatches a message to Dr. Sutton all the same. After you wait for what seems like an age, Dr. Sutton appears and greets you in a detached and professional manner. He is in his mid-40s, and his clean-shaven head amplifies the size of his thick horn-rimmed glasses. He allows a cursory nod when you tell him the reason for your visit. Of course, Armitage told me to expect you, he says. You explain that you are investigating the mysterious case of the woman brought into the hospital after her collapse at the park. It's not my case, but let's head up to the ward and see what we can find out. That seems promising. Sutton leads you through the white halls, weaving in and out of the foot traffic. On the way up, he asks whether Armitage expressed interest in the lights dancing around the nearby Emperor home. Some of the hospital workers have seen them, and the old building is supposed to be abandoned. When you tell him that Armitage hasn't mentioned it, the doctor shrugs. Now, if that's not foreshadowing for something future, the dancing lights around the Emperor home, I'm making a note. You arrive at Ward 6, and Dr. Sutton makes his way down a row of beds, stopping at the foot of one containing an attractive young woman. The woman is sleeping soundly, and Sutton lifts the chart from the end of the bed and consults the notes. We still don't have her name. She is listed here as a Jane Doe. Strange, the wound on her chest was deep, likely created by a sharp blade cutting into the flesh. However, 5 of the upper ribs on the left side were also fractured during her incident. It's as though someone removed, or was attempting to remove, something from her chest cavity. Most unusual. Dr. Noyes conducted the surgery to reset the bones. Huh. Speaking of unusual, Noyes cleared away a good deal of brownish-colored mucus from the wound. Gross. He sent a sample to the lab. The lab assistant was sent to the university library to consult medical treatises, as they were unsure of what the substance consisted. Pasquale knows about strange things as well. As Sutton ends his speech, a nurse arrives to administer a shot. No sooner is the needle withdrawn from the woman's arm, she thrashes in her bed. Sutton doesn't look concerned. He pats the nurse on the shoulder. The discomfort will quickly pass. Then, shockingly, the woman's eyes snap open and she screams a piercing shriek. Sutton calls for help as the woman raves madness, spittle dripping from her chin. Only at Bayfair's. But no, not there. The trees, why are they walking? Edward? Where's my Edward? Why is the trees have eyes? Edward, we were supposed to meet at the bell. Why are we here? Edward, it hurts, Edward. Stop it, stop it. Sutton steps in and holds the woman's shoulders, talking to her in a calm, soothing voice. After a few minutes of delirium, the woman slips into a peaceful rest. She's really been through the mill, Sutton says. The wound will heal just fine given time. However, as you can see firsthand, there are some scars that are beyond medical help. You have learned all you can from the good doctor. Her effects were taken for examination by the police. I think they were taken over to the criminologist, Dr. Corbett. Please let me know if you discover her identity. I'd like to contact her family members. She needs someone to look after her now. So, what did we learn? Bayfriars. I do not know what's at Bayfriars. The trees walking, and her Edward. We were supposed to meet at the bell, and the lab assistant sent the goo to the university library to consult what the substance was. We may have to check in with Pasquale too. If we chase down every single lead, the score goes down. So you got to be judicious in what you choose to follow up on. Effects went to Dr. Corbett, the criminologist. Well, for identifying the lady herself, I think getting her effects and talking to Dr. Corbett's probably the next best step. Because remember, we're trying to identify her, him, maybe the guy with the birthmark and the brown outfit was Edward. We shall see. But at least that's certainly something to go off of. So perhaps the man in brown is Edward. Well, let's get to the next location. Okay. So I'll only turn it back on me for reading when it's excessively long, because just staring at this map not doing anything seems kind of boring. Let's see. So we did St. Mary's, meet at the ball, because effects to Dr. Corbett. Dr. Corbett's probably the next person to go visit. And he is actually in the list of useful contacts as D45, the local criminologist. All right, so Dr. Corbett, an entry, if there is one, D45. So let's see. All right, D45 does have an entry, so that's good. We did not waste our time, and it's more than 3 sentences, so that's always a plus too. Back in the consulting detective with Sherlock Holmes, if you go to a location that doesn't have anything, you usually encounter a rude shoreman or something who would tell you to bugger off. So, you rap on the door to Herbert Corbett's lab, and after a moment you are greeted by his helper. He recognizes you and shows you through to Corbett's workroom. The workroom is a chemistry lab with several Bunsen burners blazing away. Hopefully not Dr. Benson Honeydew. Anyway, Herbert is huddled over a bench. On his head, he wears a magnifying apparatus, which he lifts to greet you. Welcome to my criminology laboratory. He shakes your hand. Sensing that this man is kept very busy, you don't waste any time with pleasantries and ask directly about the attack on the woman in Uptown Park. Ah yes, a strange one. I believe that I can shed some light on her lodgings, if nothing else. Corbett reveals a brown cardboard box. Garrison left these for me to examine. The blouse, as you can see, is saturated with blood from a wound made in her chest. Yeah, we know about that. I was interested to note that the blouse was not damaged before she was administered first aid. Huh. This suggests that the blouse was put on the woman after the injury occurred. Well, that's scandalous. More revealing is the lady's purse, which contains an address. Here. He rummages in the box. This is a bill from Rennie's boarding house and a receipt confirming that she had paid for the next month's rent in advance. There was a receipt as well from a bookstore, and it shows a little picture. Meredith Used Books. $3 received with thanks for Coleridge's collected poems, to be inscribed on the inside cover with, "To Edward with all my love, me." Well, me is not terribly helpful in identifying her name, but nonetheless. Rennie's boarding house, definitely worth checking out. Rennie's boarding house, which we now need to find in the directory. Gas stations, hotels. Let's see, is it under hotels? Maybe that's too fancy. Diners, churches, boarding houses. Rennie's boarding house, F16. All right. So, in the evening of day 1, we will stop by Rennie's boarding house and see what they have to say. Well, we're in luck. Or we're not in luck, depending on how much you enjoy listening to me read things, because there's a lot to read at the boarding house. The 3-story clapperboard house on Litch Street is neat and presentable. A small sign advertises Rennie's boarding house that has vacant rooms. You are greeted at the front desk by one of the Rennie twins, Thomas, a friendly man in his 30s with a mop of dark hair. "Are you wanting to rent a room?" You describe the woman in the hospital who was attacked, explaining that she has a receipt for payment for one of his rooms. "Well, that sounds very much like Martha Modine." "Ah. She's been with us for over a year now. I believe she works over on Main Street in one of the stores. I do hope she is okay. She's got a kind heart, always willing to do a kindness for a stranger. She's smitten as well, having recently fallen in love with a man named Mr. Hartwell." Ah, so now we have a last name to put with Edward. So Martha Modine and Edward Hartnell. "Don't care for him too much. Surly eyes, makes dogs bark every time he's around. My dogs never bark. Clearly young Martha can see redeeming qualities, I suppose." You ask if you may see Martha's room, and he agrees, striding past you. Well, that's not great, but whatever. Brandishing a passkey. Martha's room is modest, but well kept and pleasantly decorated. On a small bookcase, there are several works of poetry. That ties in. A photograph in a frame on the mantel catches your eye. You walk over and examine it. It is a picture of a lady and a gentleman, and there can be no doubt that this is the woman that Armitage described. The couple gazing lovingly at one another with that faraway, dreamy look of a movie romance. The man has a small birthmark under his left eye. Ding! Look at that. 3 locations, and we got both their names. That's them, Martha and Hartwell, though he looks as though butter wouldn't melt in his mouth, unlike her. Butter wouldn't melt in his mouth? That's a terrible expression. You ask for more information on Hartwell, and Rennie tells you that Hartwell has been seeing Martha for several weeks, and that he had a house on the lower south side on East Saltonstall Street. Saltonstall? Well, whatever. Okay, well, this is good news. We just answered 2 of the 3 questions. Who is she, who is he, and what happened? So, we have some extra clues. Now, the real question is, for the start of day 2, are we going to go see where Edward Hartwell lives and maybe see if we can't confront him? Or would it be better to go find out about the goo? If we're going to confront him, it seems like we'd better off knowing something about the goo first and the nature of her wound, since he wasn't clinging to her side as she was being worked on and instead fled the scene, so that hardly speaks well for him. So if we're going to go confront the idiot, I suppose we better have more data. So let us go instead to the library where the goo was sent and see what we can find out. So the morning of day 2, rested up with our morning coffee and having eaten probably a bagel or a croissant or something with it, we shall go to the library. Not Dr. Armitage's office in particular, but the library itself, which is location C23. It's a weird thing to do to go checking stuff out there, but I guess they just use that as a general placeholder for most of the university stuff. So C23, let's hope we have an entry, and there is. So that's nice, but it's not terribly long, so you don't have to watch me read it. You come across Ms. Sargent among the stacks in the Orn Library. Don't tell me old Armored Charles has got you working on a Sunday, she says with a grin. I guess it's Sunday. What is it you need from our repository today? You explain the nature of your visit, and your request is met with a curious look. It's funny you should say that, because the hospital has been working on something that came out of a patient. I've had to move on to some of our more esoteric volumes after I drew a blank. Come on, I'll show you what I've got up to. Miss Sargent leads you up a narrow flight of stairs, through a door marked Restricted, No Entry, and into the restricted reading room. The librarian crosses to a heavy reading table made of solid oak and shows you an ancient tome resting there. This is the dreaded De Vermis Mysterii, written by the German von Prinn. I am working on a translation in my spare time. Now, editorial pause here. In the Call of Cthulhu game, if anybody was trying to translate that book, they would certainly be slowly losing their sanity as they go. Anyway, her finger wavers over a page, shaking nervously. Here the book speaks about a mucus residue being a byproduct of ritual sacrifice. The book also speaks of the guardians of occult ritual, horrible monsters called the Dark Young. Hold on, I know another book that references these things. So we've got the Dark Young and a ritual sacrifice. Interesting. Let's see what our other book has to say. The librarian moves to a shelf and hefts down another tome with the title Eben embossed in gold upon its spine. These cultists always have good book bindings. She flips gently through the pages. Here is a story of the creatures called the Dark Young, about a Teutonic knight in the 12th century who led a band of villagers into battle against the evil living in the forest. Aha. And there's a little quote from the book. Ever their praises in abundance to the black goat of the woods. Ea, Ea, the black goat of the woods with 1,000 young. The shub are the height of 4 men. Let's see, the text roughly translates, they are able to stand perfectly still and lurk in the shadows of trees as if blending, waiting upon its prey, and attacking with tentacles that sprout from their heads. Miss Sargent pauses, hand over her mouth. Well, they sound disgusting. I assume this is a variation on the Grendel myth from the Beowulf saga. Okay. Well, that revealed a lot. I think we can safely assume that the moving trees were not in fact moving trees, but were in fact the Dark Young, and the charming Edward there was apparently in the process of sacrificing Miss Sargent when she somehow got out, I guess, or fled. All right, now it's definitely time to go look in on Edward, last name Hartwell. We'll check under Crazy Cultists. That's probably a large entry in this town. E. Hartwell, L26. All right, jackpot. L26, Edward Hartwell. Edward Hartwell's home is average and unassuming. A cat draws your attention as you step forward to knock on the door. The mangy feline is backing away from a basement window. The poor creature's eyes are wide and its back is arched, hair standing on end. It's hissing in the most fearsome way. Well, that's not ominous. You knock on the door, and when there is no reply, you knock again. As minutes tick by, you decide that a closer inspection of the rear of the property might be in order. After all, if his lady was injured, there's a chance that someone may have attempted to injure Edward Hartwell as well. I don't think any of us believe that. But it sounds good if the cops show up. The yard at the back of the building is well tended, and the fence is new and painted. The back door is unlocked. Dun dun dun. Stealing inside quickly so you're not observed, you find yourself in a clean and tidy kitchen. The cutlery and plates are neatly washed and stacked on the drying board. The attention to tidiness continues in each room. A pile of mail addressed to Edward Hartwell sits on a small table near the front door. Remembering the cat, you discover a small cellar door in the kitchen and head down into the basement where a bare, flickering bulb illuminates a small workroom. Discarded under a workbench is a small, broken packing crate stamped with the Miskatonic Museum's address. On the bench lies a wickedly sharp, straight-bladed dagger, etched with unusual symbols on its wooden hilt. Aha. The razor-sharp blade reveals flecks of red stain. Next to the dagger is a bowl, also stained dark red. Your stomach lurches at the uncomfortable thought that these are the implements that injured the woman at the hospital. A few pieces of old parchment with indecipherable, crabbed handwriting lie scattered nearby. Placed next to the parchment is an open wooden box containing 4 large grain seeds. Each is about the length of your fingernail and jet black. Leaving everything as you found it, you exit the property the way you came. Huh. So I'm thinking the last thing to do maybe is to check in at the end of day 2 here. And we'll be within the 6 to 11 locations, because we're at 5 locations right now, is go check in with the mystic spiritualist guy, Pasquale. And we know from our useful allies that Pasquale Fenton is at L4. So if you've ever heard the phrase, too long to be wrong, I think we're in the right place. Armitage has little good to say about the odious little man that is Pasquale Fenton. Arkham's most celebrated occultist, he and Armitage have a lifelong rivalry. Too much the showman, and some might argue, charlatan for most tastes. However, Pasquale manages to make an impressive living. His mansion is tawdry and garish, decorated with a vast collection of the occult, including deformities in jars, unusual medical devices, and jewelry that evoke rituals. Route 66 kind of place. He invites you in cordially enough, but the smirk that appears on his arrogant face when he learns the reason behind your call raises his hackles. All right. Oh, so now I'm consulted on this matter? I would have thought the bumbling idiot Garrison would have come himself rather than sending his protege. Biting your tongue, you explain the wound on the young lady and why the police would be concerned. Pasquale realizes he's being a bit nasty and changes his tone. Trees? She went on about being attacked by trees, did she? I would suggest you have stumbled upon the cultist of the Shub whatever, also known as the Black Goat with 1,000 young. There are mutterings of certain dark rituals that, well, her followers use sacrificial victims to host the spawn from unholy seed to infant. The wounds on this woman may be that, or maybe she is just insane. The mad abound in Arkham, as I guess you've heard from the stories. That would be a better guess. Pasquale pauses and you encourage him to tell you more about Shub and the Dark Goat, or the Black Goat. He is a bit reluctant to share his knowledge, but continues. A spawn is sliced free from the flesh of the host and brought into this world to wreak whatever horrors it may. Investigate the witch cults in Arkham if you truly want to go down this path. It's very well, it may be the lady who was attacked is delusional from some poison, or she made it up altogether. You ask what the spawn is likely to do, if indeed it has been born into the world. Pasquale bites his lower lip. For now, nothing. The spawn will take a number of years to fully mature. The texts speak of these creatures often attacking domesticated animals, particularly dogs and cats. Even in seed form, the animals can sense their evil presence. Huh. So that's what those seeds were we found down, and there's 3 or 4 of them, so that's not great news. And referring back to the Arkham Advertiser, missing Tabby Cat. SI reward to D. Pickman, South Parsonage Street. So, L26, right off South Parsonage Street. Well, well, well. I guess we'll move on to the questions, because I feel pretty confident that we've done what we should. That is a lot of questions. What is the name of the woman who collapsed in the street? Well, we know that one for sure. We have that in the notes. That is Martha Modine. Who was the suspicious character? That's Edward Hartnell. How did the woman come by her injury? He tried to sacrifice her in the woods. What is the danger in the park? That would be the offspring of the Black Goat. What was stolen from the museum? That would be his ritual dagger that he used. Who is the out-of-town cultist of Shub? I had no idea. Why did the cat hiss at the wall? Because of the seeds in the basement. Who did the hospital workers see on the top floor of the Emperor home? Don't know. What was Barclay Rutger up to? I don't know that one either. What was the name of the late night graveyard visitor? I didn't even know there was one. Why did the late night graveyard visitor visit at night? And what was he doing? Also don't know. And what is the word scrawled all over the Emperor house? Wow, so there's like a whole section of clues that we completely missed. So that's not great for us. But it did just say to look out for that information. So let's find out what it says. So, yep. What is the name of the woman who collapsed? Martha Modine, that's 3 points. So, that's cool. Who was the suspicious character that made a quick exit? Edward Hartwell, so we get 5 points for that. That's good. How did the woman come by her injury? The ritual of extraction on the spawn. Yep, we got that for 5 points. What is the danger in the park? The trees, the dark young. It's a tree that comes alive, 1 point, or if you knew the name of the creature, a dark young, 3 points. Doing good so far. What was stolen from the museum? The ritual bowl, known as a Cthulu birthing dish. Well, we didn't know that part, but we did get that it was stolen, so 2. Who is the out-of-town cultist? Mr. Ingram. Okay, didn't know that. Why did the cat hiss? It was sensing the seeds. We got that one. That's 1 point. Who did the hospital worker see? No idea. What was Barclay Rutger up to? Also don't know. Nope. Who was in the graveyard? Don't know why they were visiting. And the word scrawled over there, we don't know. Okay. If you visited Uptown Park, which we did not, deduct 1 point from your score. Okay. Locations visited. Count the number of locations you traveled, unless a location did not contain an actual written encounter. Because in that case, it still counts for your time, but it doesn't count. Here, let me put over here. Since I zoomed in. So we went to six locations, and against in your score, it only counts against you if there's something in that location, but it still costs you time to do it. Count the number of locations you traveled, unless the location did not contain a written encounter. So we went to 6. Deduct 1 point for every location you traveled beyond 7. Armitage was able to answer most questions by visiting 7 locations. Final score. Our final score was 3 plus 5, plus 5 plus 3, plus 2 plus 1. So 10, 13, 16, 17, 18, 19. We got 19 points. If you received 12 points or plus, you win. On the following page, you may view the locations Armitage visited. Fewer than 12 points, Armitage realizes you are still an amateur and he offers you a bit of help on the case. On your next investigation, you may visit 1 more location. If you scored 18 plus points, which we did, we scored 19, you have done quite well, but now you are convinced that you have attracted the attention of someone. Oh, great. Go to Investigation 2's Supplemental Encounters section and read entry 12. The following evening, the courier drops by you a signed letter. You are surprised that it is from Pasquale Fenton, Armitage's old friend and enemy alike. It reads, I believe your talents are well advanced, and I think you can agree Armitage has little more to teach you. Why not become my pupil? I know Armitage judges me harshly, but he is not as pure as you believe. Did you know he has a secret hiding place in Arkham that he has not told you or anyone else about? Perhaps keep your eyes open. What does he do there, I wonder? Pasquale. Huh. So that's the secret note we get from Pasquale because we scored more than 18 points. Okay, so here we go with the conclusion. In the end, a simple mystery. Back in Armitage's office, you feel the legwork of the week was far from simple. Garrison, reclining near the open window in a leather-winged back chair, gives you a look that implies he agrees with you. Garrison says, there was the question of the woman's identity to wrestle with, Henry. That seemed like the most pertinent fact that we were missing from the start. Armitage nods. Indeed, that was forefront in my mind as well, Inspector. And once I had visited her room at Rennie's boarding house, I was able to put name to our young lady, Miss Martha Modine. Garrison looks perplexed. What on earth led you up French Hill to the Rennie house? Armitage grins. Alas, Inspector, so wrapped up were your officers in door-to-door solicitations over identity of the young lady, they neglected her possessions. Her receipt from the boarding house clearly showed that she had intended to stay there for another month, and this led me to her friend, Hartwell, and his lair, so clean and tidy. Garrison shrugs grudgingly, an admission that a focus on the surrounding streets was the wrong call given the circumstance. Well, what happened to her then? Why did that villain Hartwell attack the woman he professed to love? That, Inspector, perhaps we will never fully comprehend. Or will we? Mr. Edward Hartwell had a love greater than the one he professed to hold for Martha. There was a special bond between the two, but Edward was held thrall to dark powers beyond our world. The rantings he uttered upon his arrest, aha, so they arrested him, were testament to that. His love for the unspeakable evil of the black goat outweighed even his fondness for the lovely Miss Modine. He must have been planning it for some time, slipping one of those damnable seeds into her food. where it wriggled its way into her chest cavity, there to grow and feed on her like a parasite. Martha was the unknowing host to this evil insider. I must admit that Weasel Pasquale was of some use there, and it confirmed what I had learned from my readings from Eben in the library. A lingering memory of his feelings for Martha must have prompted Edward, in remorse, to redress her and lay her out to expire rather than complete the prescribed sacrifice. Okay. Well, there's no way of really knowing that part, but all right. It is likely that the secretions of the spawn, that foul mucus, stayed in the blood flow for a short time and dulled the pain. As the influence of the spawn waned after its removal, it is clear Martha awoke and was able to stagger back to the street to try and find help. Garrison interjects, "Why the attack in the park then? Surely he was taking a risk in such a public place." Armitage pauses, then responds, "It would seem the ritual needed to be overseen by a watcher, a dark young, one of the blasphemous child. Where could one of these evil creatures hide in Arkham but in a heavily wooded park? He needed to conduct the ritual outside. What risk was there in an overgrown part of Uptown Park? With a slice and a snap of bones, he was able to free the unholy spawn and store it in the Chthonian birthing dish that was taken from the museum. That is, until he could transfer it to more secure bindings and hand it off to his friend, Victor Ingram." Ah, so that's what we missed. "It is a shame that you missed him, Inspector." Garrison nods at the suitcase next to Armitage's desk, the twinkle back in his eye. "Aye, a shame. Seems like you and I have a trip to make in the morning. Unfinished business." Armitage solved this investigation by visiting 7 locations. So there you have it. That is investigation 1 of 8 from Mythos Tales. I hope you liked it. I certainly did. It's pretty entertaining. I don't know how well it'll play on video though. Feel free to comment if you liked it and listening to me read and play through the clues and everything. I'll probably make one more of these and then wait and see what people say as to whether this is really boring to you and you couldn't care less, or you're interested. Because I like it a lot. There's only 7 more to go, and it's obviously building a story with some stuff that was laid out, because now we have the little creepy spawn thing running around in the background somewhere. So we shall see. In any case, I'm Ray. This is Tiny Table Games. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. See you next time.